Hi, welcome to the CEO podcast. Today I have Tiffany Leigh from Tiffany Leigh Design. She is an amazing designer located quite close to where I am, just north of Toronto. And she is best known for her absolutely stunning kind of English countryside interiors. Absolutely love them. If you don't follow her, please go check it out. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Brittany. I'm so excited to be here and chat with you today.
You look adorable, and I'm really loving your little scape behind you. And I know that's something that you mentioned you do a lot is like hand drafting and a lot of like real like textural, and I don't know, like I just feel like that's so you. So let's start there. Talk to us a little bit about your process and kind of the organic feel that comes into all of your work.
Yeah, for me, the more the world leans into technology and AI, the more I find I'm kind of resisting it. I think it has its perks. I definitely use ChatGPT to help write a difficult email or something like that. But when it comes to the actual design process, I really love to honor traditional methods. So hand sketching. We don't do a ton of 3D visualizations for our clients. We'll do 2D rendered elevations, but I think that some of that takes the magic out of kind of the reveal, and it takes some of the magic out of the ability to pivot and find a great antique piece that would look perfect in this space, but wasn't in that 3D rendering or something like that. So I try to keep the process quite old school and organic. And, I went to design school where you would spend 5 hours in drafting class just sketching. And that for me is where my creativity at least starts to kind of really come to life.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right when it comes to like if it's rendered a certain way or there's a very specific piece that you've put into the design and then you get inspired and you want to maybe change gears or something's out of stock, like it does kind of limit your lane in a way, from being able to have that creative freedom. So I think it's really cool that you've been able to cultivate clients that allow you to have that kind of freedom, because I think a lot of designers don't get that. And so that's really interesting. Let's go back to the beginning. So tell us
Yeah.
about your journey and your design business. Where did you start? Where did you go to school? Give us a little bit of background on you as a designer.
Of course. So I went to the Academy of Design Toronto. I think it maybe is called something else now, Yorkville University. But that's where I got my design degree. And while I was there, I started working for Sarah Richardson, who's a fairly well-known Canadian interior designer. She was big on HGTV and things like that. So I was really excited. I grew up watching her on TV. So for me, it was kind of a dream job. And when I graduated, I got hired on there full time. So I worked there for almost 5 years. And I always knew that I wanted to start my own business. And in 2019, the universe kind of gave me the push to jump out on my own when my landlord decided to sell my apartment that I was renting. So I had to move out. I moved in with my partner, Luke, who was living a couple hours away in Hamilton at the time, and started doing the commute and realizing that it was just there. It was time. Those 4 hours
It
a
was
day.
soul crushing.
Yeah, exactly. Those 4 hours a day I was spending in the car, I was thinking, that I could be working on my business during these 4 hours. My expenses are never going to be lower. My rent had been cut more than in half. And I felt like it was just the universe saying, this is it, take the leap. So I started working out of Luke's dining room in his apartment, and it was not the nicest place. You couldn't run the coffee maker and the printer at the same time without blowing a fuse. And but it was so exciting. And even though, it wasn't glamorous in the beginning working there, for me, I was just so excited about starting my own business. I was so passionate. And over time, over the past 5 years, we have grown. We are now a team of 5. We are in a beautiful 2-story office building. We have projects across Canada. We have projects in the United States. So it's really quite amazing to see what the past 5 years have brought. It hasn't always been easy, but it's always been something that I've really, really enjoyed.
That's amazing. That's really impressive for like only being in business now on your own for 6 years, right? That's
Yeah.
really, really impressive that you've kind of created that reach. And I really think just from following you, it's because you have such a unique style. It's very much, I guess, I'm guessing, and I'd love for you to confirm, but are people coming to you for your look? Like, are you getting like a lot of people that are just like, I need this exact thing that you're creating all the time?
Yeah, I think now we're at a place where people are coming to us for our style, the style that they see on our Instagram and on our portfolio. That wasn't always the case. And I think, in the beginning, you're kind of saying yes to every project that comes your way. You're just wanting to pay the bills, you're wanting to gain the experience, you're wanting to get your name out there. I think the thing that I knew from very early on was that even when I completed, an early on project that was beautiful in its own way, if it wasn't my exact style and it was more the client style, I chose not to photograph it. I chose to just let that project be for the client and have them enjoy it. And even though it was stunning, I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do more of. And, photo shoots are expensive. So really allocating your marketing dollars to projects that are going to attract the kinds of projects that you want to do more of, I think is really, really important. So that was the decision that I made early on. And that can be a hard decision when you don't have a big body of work yet, right? So
Yes.
I
Yeah.
always tell people when I do some mentoring calls for people in the industry, and I always tell them it's better to have two really strong projects in your portfolio than 10 ones that maybe aren't reflective of what you are trying to put out in the world.
Yeah, that's great advice because I do think we're, content and portfolio, like we just are constantly like, oh, I got to post today. I got to do this. I got to have this done. And it's like, if you're photographing something and putting it out into the world, you're basically telling the universe, I want more of this. And, and you're telling clients, like, I love to do this. This is my style. And so it is difficult to kind of pick and choose. And I even had clients in the past be like, why aren't you photographing my project? And you're like, um,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
it's tough to kind of navigate that. So I definitely respect that immensely because it is very hard, but it does make sense. And it makes sense to narrow in that focus and put that out into the world and be like, and then people are like, is that all she does? Which is
Right.
basically what you want to happen because you really want them to only be coming to you for what you want to do. So that's great advice for sure. What have been the best and worst parts of your career to date?
Oh my goodness. I think the best for me is always install days, the days when the project, gets installed, comes to life, the client comes home, and they get to see and you get to see the vision and all the hard work come to life. I mean, some of the projects we work on are 2 years long. And so it's so rewarding to install days are hard, they're long, they're exhausting, but they've always been my favorite part of the job when I was working for someone else, when I've been working for myself. So that for me is everything. I think for me, the worst parts of owning a business, if I'm being really honest, the worst days I've ever had as a business owner are the days when I have had to let somebody go. I think it's extremely um hard. It's just really hard. And they
Yeah.
always say it's when you have to make those tough decisions and act in the best interest of your company. They say, it's not personal, it's just business, but I always try not to trivialize it in that way because, for the person who you might be letting go, it is quite personal. It's their livelihood, it's everything. And even though it is a business decision, I never take that lightly. And I just hate when it comes to that.
Yeah, I've had to do that a couple of times too. And it's hard, especially when you have a small team like we do. Like you do become quite personal with them. Like you do
Right.
share parts of your life and you know them on a personal level and you see them every day. And it's like you're not in a big office with cubicles and stuff. Like you're literally working like hand in hand and like it's hard. It's really hard. And
It's
there's a
hard.
human element to it as well. Like you don't just want to be cold and kind of come off that way. So I totally understand that. And I think that's very true. Like that is definitely difficult.
Yeah.
In
And I
ter-
think it's one of those things when you start your business, you think, I'm going to hire the perfect team. Everyone's going to be great. I'm never going to mess up. And you don't think about those tough days, but I think they inevitably can come, right?
yeah. And what about dealing with clients? Do you ever find that difficult? Like, have you ever had to go through any kind of situations where you're dealing with someone who's very upset or anything like that, where you've had to kind of learn how to navigate that as a business owner?
Yeah, of course. I think especially when you're dealing with homes, people's homes are very personal, right? People get really emotional about their homes the way they might not for another purchase that they're making. And it's also a huge financial investment. And when, you know, the economy shifts or things like that, people get stressed out, people get worried. And I think I always try to give clients the benefit of the doubt. I've definitely gotten better as time has gone on of identifying those red flags early in the onboarding process to be able to kind of say, you know what, I don't think maybe we're not the best fit for you, and get out of those before the actual design starts rolling. But that said, I mean, things happen. I think we operate as a team with this sensibility of, we call it unreasonable hospitality. It's from Will Guidara. He's a restaurateur. He has a book called Unreasonable Hospitality, and his whole thing is that, you know, you go above and beyond for your clients, no matter what, to make their experience excellent. And it's in the small things. And so for us, when a client is upset, we try not to blame them. We try to look inwards and say, okay, what can we do better? How can we fix this? What can we do? What's even a small gesture that would mean a lot to this person? So we've had, you know, a dining table be delayed, and the clients were going to have, you know, a dinner that night, not just the two of them, but they were looking forward to, you know, that install, and the dining
Right.
table wasn't there. So we left a gift card to their favorite local restaurant. We said, we
Oh,
know your
nice.
table's not here, but we'd love for you to like enjoy a dinner to celebrate your house, and your dining table will be here on Monday, kind of thing. So it's just these little small things that you can think about to try and make your clients happy. And the hope is over time, you build a really great relationship with your clients that when things do come up, it's not as explosive.
Yes, yes, for sure. And I think it's good too, like what you mentioned about seeing the red flags early on. Like I say in the podcast and to mentorship students, like not everybody is for everybody. And it's like you can't
Mhm.
go out into the world. You can be like the loveliest person with the greatest business ethics, and you can go out into the world and like you're gonna clash with somebody. And if you can notice that early on, you're doing everybody a favor, both the client and yourself, by saying, like, listen, somebody else out there is better for you. And whether that's like their design style doesn't fit, they're like, why aren't you understanding me? Like everything you're showing me doesn't, you know, it's not what I want. That kind of thing. It's just like, it's not a good fit. Let's go our separate ways. Let's all be happy and like, you know, not have
Absolutely. And I
to.
think, yeah, a big red flag for me that always has gotten me in trouble in the past with clients is noticing when somebody doesn't respect the processes that you're describing to them early on. So I think that for me is a big red flag, because I find that something that causes tension, right? An example would be like, we ship all of our items to a third party receiving warehouse.
Mhm.
If early on the client is saying, oh, well, I have an empty basement, just ship them to my house, it's not a big deal. Even if during that call they agree to use the third party warehouse, when it comes time to, you know, 6 months later, actually ordering the furniture, they're gonna bring up again, let's just ship it to my basement, all this. And then it can cause problems in your process, in your efficiency. Then the bills start piling up because you're having to do extra work because you're not following your processes, then they get upset with the extra bill. It's a, you know, it's a cycle that just
Absolutely.
rolls. Yeah.
Yes, yes, very much agree with that. And we have like the strictest process, and we have like a huge document we send to people after the discovery call, being like, here's a reiteration of how we do things. And like, we don't break from this. And like, you know, this is how many revisions you get. And this is, yeah, we do the same thing. Like, this is where your furniture goes, and this is how much it costs. And because,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so much smoother if they just follow the process. And typically at the end, they always say, like, I'm so glad I followed your process. It was so easy. You're like,
Always.
yeah,
I know. But I think especially when you're at the beginning of your business, it can be really tough to be strict about those things, right? Because you're wanting to land the client. I think after a few years, you're more established, it's easier. But I think advice for anyone earlier in their business is really try to stick to it, because it will save you a lot of headaches.
absolutely. And it's also a nice fallback if something does go wrong. You have your process to lean on. So it's like, let's say someone doesn't pay a bill on time or something, and you can, all you have to do is like deflect back to that, like, okay, well, in our process, like, this is when the bill is due, so like we have to stop work now until it's paid. And if that's not like written anywhere or shared in any way, it becomes a lot more difficult to enforce. Whereas if you
Yes.
have that kind of hard and true line that you follow, and if you follow it throughout and they know that you're a stickler for it, then it's a lot easier to kind of
Exactly.
do
Once
things.
you bend once, they'll know they can get you to bend again, right? So
Yes, yes, for sure. How long were you in the industry before you nailed your signature style? I know obviously you worked with Sarah Richardson. She has, in my opinion, more of like kind of a coastal type of style, but lots of blues, lots of whites. Um, have you always loved this? Like I saw you were in the Cotswolds recently, which is again, like I'm from a British background and it's epic over there. But what it like, have you always loved this or did you kind of like, did it evolve? How did that happen?
I think, yes, I've always loved, a classic English European style. I think it's evolved for sure as my business has grown and as clients have become more trusting of that. I think I have also gotten better at enforcing, like, you've hired me not just to create a beautiful space that anybody could replicate, but let's try to push it. Let's try to do something special. Um, but that being said, I think I'm still evolving. I think I'd still like to push it further. I think my tastes are a little bit more traditional than some of my current projects reflect. I love vintage. I love antiques. I really love pattern and color within reason. I'm known for a very earthy palette, and I love an earthy palette, but I would love to get like a pop of red in there or, something like that. So I think it's important as a designer to always be evolving, always be growing and changing, but still staying true to yourself, not just following the trends as they go this way or that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that's something you see a lot of when you're kind of like cruising on Instagram or something. You're seeing like everybody's suddenly doing slatted this and everyone's doing, scalloped everything. And you're just kind of like, okay, where do you fall where you're like still true to what you love? And how do you like also that creates timelessness, right? Like people are constantly asking for timeless design, which I mean, I think probably your style is as close as you're going to get to timeless design because it is a little more historic and it's not like trendy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I now with the green thing going on, I feel like it's definitely like, but not because you're following a trend, more like trends are following what you're doing, is what I'm saying. But
Yeah, everyone's
uh,
big on green right now. Yeah.
yeah, green's the thing. So yeah, I think it's hard to kind of if you're following trends and people want like timeless, I mean, I always say to clients, like, you're never going to get timeless. You might get something that's cool again in like 30 years, but
Right. Right.
it's difficult to do that. It's like, you just have to be happy with it right now and for the next 15, 20 years. And then we'll have to reevaluate when we get to that point.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I guess that kind of leads into my next question. And we sort of touched on this before, but how do you deal with projects that don't align with your style? I know that obviously you're at a place in your career now where I think probably a lot of people are coming to you for your style. Do you get any clients coming to you that are like, I want like a modern kitchen, but I want to work with you?
Yeah, we definitely do. I think that our onboarding process has been really good at kind of detecting who's going to be the right fit, who's not. And we are intentionally a small team. We're a team of 5. So we take on just a limited number of projects every year. And so it's important that every project we're taking on does align. So the 3, I would say, big ones are respect for our process, which we talked about already.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is budget. I think, the projects that we're doing do require a certain budget. Not everybody is there. And I think, with shows on HGTV and things like that, ideas about what design costs are a little bit unrealistic sometimes. And so we just try to educate the client. And if we find that the budget is not in alignment, but they really like our style, there are other options. We are on the platform The Expert, which offers one-on-one virtual consultations to clients. So that's something that we can offer them instead, which is really nice. And then when it comes to style, if the style is way off, we usually just recommend somebody in the industry who we respect, who we feel would be a better fit.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's always a nice thing to have in your back pocket as well. I also run a construction company, so we work closely with a few different designers and
Yeah.
all sometimes people will kind of get to know me based on the construction company. Like maybe they'll call the construction side for an estimate and then I will go to do the estimate and then they'll meet me and they'll be like, "Oh, I really like you. Can we work together?" But I'm like, actually like this designer is going to be way better for what you're looking for and like we work with them too. So like call her. It's great.
Right.
Because yeah, you just know right off the bat, you're gonna run into some roadblocks and like the customer's going to be happier probably with someone else.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think when you try to work in a style that you're not passionate about, I think the result is always less great because your
Yes.
heart is not as in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you're still delivering something the client is happy with, and there's some satisfaction in that. But yes, there's like definitely a limit to like how excited you're getting about that project when it's not like feeding your soul.
Exactly.
So when did you know it was time to make your first hire? So you went out on your own after working with Sarah. You were working out of Luke's dining room. When was it where you were like, oh my God, I'm going to drown? Help.
Yeah, for sure. So I hired my first hire fairly early on, I would say within the first month. And it was a remote hire. And it was somebody to help with, my invoicing, my bookkeeping, all of that stuff. And I think from my experience working at another firm, I saw just how much time that component of the business takes and just how much it was not my favorite part of the business. So, it's not a new idea that you kind of identify your weaknesses and you hire for those weaknesses first. And I wanted to be really professional with my clients, right? So I didn't want the invoices coming out any day of the week when I could find time to create an invoice. I wanted them coming out the same day every month. I wanted somebody else to be able to follow up regarding payment, and things like that. I kind of wanted to be the creative, friendly person and have someone else be more like the financial person on the business client facing. So that was something I did early. And I think it really served me well because things didn't turn into a mess that I had to clean up. It was just clean from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was a few months before I started working with, brought on another designer to kind of help with some of the tasks of the actual design. And again, I started small. I started with freelance people hourly, until eventually worked my way up to having full-time employees.
Amazing. I think that's great advice, going for not only just what hiring for your weakness, but I think just in general, the accounting portion, just to keep it clean from the get-go. Because I'm kind of on the opposite end. I started on my own being like, I can handle this. Like I did billing at my previous corporate construction job. Like I've built $1 million projects. I don't need to worry about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have royally screwed up my QuickBooks. Like this thing is a hot pile. Like it is. So I ended up hiring someone, probably in my first year as well, like a bit later on, maybe 8 months in. And I was
Yeah.
like, help me. And she had to like go in and clean it all. And like, it was just a mess. But creating that separation between being like the nice creative person and like the billing person, huge. Because I have a lead designer that works for me and she does most of the design stuff. I kind of oversee, but I actually prefer the financial management side of things. So I still do all that. And it's
Right.
true, I have to be kind of mean sometimes, like if there's outstanding bills or if people are like, I'm not going to pay for this, it's like, okay, well, no, you are, and this is why, and everything like that. Like I love that stuff, I enjoy it, but
Yeah.
I don't necessarily love looking for tiles for 5 hours. Like I like to see it kind of the full completion of the design, and then I go, okay, change this and this, and then we move on. So it's interesting to see how different people work and what kind of where the passion lies in different areas.
Yeah.
So you have 5 team members now, or 5 total including you?
5 total, including me.
Nice. And you guys you have your own office, like you have a separate area that you've got?
Yeah, so we're in a 2-story building in downtown Barrie. It's lovely. It's a nice old Victorian house that's kind of been converted. I'm sitting
Oh,
in it right
nice.
now, so it's lovely. And we're working now on creating, because we used to have an online shop, and it had a little bit of a showroom down on the main floor. We've since decided to close the shop and really focus on our client projects. It's where really my passion was landing. So we're kind of doing a reno right now of that main floor to make it a space for our clients to come in, have their presentations, look at samples, see all of their finishes, and, kind of put our money where our mouth is. So to say, hey, come into our washroom, see what an unlacquered brass faucet looks like, feels like, patinas. Look at this drapery, look at this pleat style. This is our preferred pleat style, so we're kind of creating this really lovely client space, which I'm excited about.
That's awesome. We have a studio as well in Newmarket, and it's the same thing. Like it was such a game changer. We actually did it during COVID because I obviously have a construction team, and for probably 4 weeks we couldn't work before they deemed construction like an emergency service. So for 4 weeks, I'm like, how do I keep these guys paid? So I'm like, we're renovating the office, and like it's So we did it exactly the same. We did some moldings on the walls to show people like what was achievable with an applied molding. We have an area where we can lay out like full presentations, all the samples, an area to like sit and have coffee, a bathroom with really crazy wallpaper to be like, okay, come in here and see like how does this make you feel, like color drenched ceilings, all the whole thing. And
Oh, wow.
it's so
Beautiful.
great, like to
Yeah.
your point, to have people in and also not to have to like lug samples everywhere with you to show people. That was a big game changer for us. So
Yeah. And that
yeah.
said, I mean, I worked out of a home office for a couple of years. We've been in this space for 2 years now. So for the first 3 years, we weren't in Luke's apartment very long, thankfully, but then I was working out of our home for the next 2 years after that until finally getting our space. And yeah, it's a total game changer. It's so nice. And a little bit of separation between home and work is also
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, to be able to kind of pick up and go to the office is a nice feeling. I do like working from home sometimes, but I wouldn't want to do it every day. So you had the online store. What's your opinion, or what is your kind of vibe on like other forms of income? So you had the online store. Do you have other kind of streams that you've invested in?
Yeah, so a big revenue stream for us is our expert calls. So we were really excited when the expert asked us to be on their platform. So for anyone who might not know, the expert kind of positions itself as featuring the world's best interior designers, and anybody in the world can kind of access you via this platform, hire you for 25 minutes or 55-minute consultations. So I do both business mentoring and client mentoring or design work there. So, I have had the pleasure of meeting with people from Australia. So it's 10 a.m. here, it's midnight there, and we're meeting to have design chats. So I love that. We do some affiliate marketing and affiliate links. And then the design is really our main meat of revenue.
Yeah, for sure. What would be your number one piece of advice to students wanting to get into the career of design? So you did a formal education in design. Is there kind of a path you'd recommend, or any kind of just like core advice that you would give students who are looking to this as a career?
Yeah, I think that school is great. It's a huge bonus, especially for kind of the technical side of design. So, learning AutoCAD and things like that. But I think it takes a lot more than just having a degree in design. So that's something I always caution people about. There's so much that I learned once I got outside of design school that I had no idea, like how to budget a project. They don't really teach that in design school. It's very conceptual. And so, you get in the real world and you've got a lot to learn, but I think you have to learn how to train your eye. I think you should experiment in your own space to find your style. I think that's really important. And then I think a lot of people are really eager to jump right into business ownership. And I think that works for a lot of people. I personally found I learned so much working for another firm first. And that experience was really, really valuable to setting me up for success in the long term. So I think if you're feeling like you might want to work for somebody else first, there's no shame in that. I think it's a great idea. And yeah, just follow your heart.
Yeah, I think those are all very good points. And I absolutely agree with you on the budget side. We're actually creating a course right now for like people coming out of school for designers, because all the interns I've had over the years, I'm like, okay, so here's the budget and here's this. And they're like, what do you mean a budget? And I'm like, what do you mean? What do I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, we don't really understand. Like, we didn't do that. I'm like, they don't teach you budgets at school, like the number one thing that people are worried about. And they're like, no. So I'm like, okay, there's a gap here. Like,
Ah,
so I'm literally just putting it all together to be like, here's how we do absolutely everything. Please learn this so that you don't
so
experience
smart.
this when you go into your own business. But agree with you for sure on working for someone else. I did so I was in commercial construction for 7 years prior to starting my business. And then I also did like a 8 month stint on HGTV as a design assistant. I don't know if you ever worked on the TV side with Sarah, but it is like crazy.
Intense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Intense.
Like, I remember I was driving around in this like giant cube van in the city trying to like pick up stuff for the show. And then I like drove into like one of those like really low parking garages and like
Oh no.
almost took the roof off this truck. And I was like, I'm gonna die, like just bawling my eyes out. Like, it was so stressful, but
Yeah.
it definitely taught me a lot.
Yeah, I bet. I know. It's like a crash course, that whole world.
Yes, yes, it's wild. You've mentioned the universe a couple times as we're chatting, so I feel like you're vibey with that. Do you follow any kind of manifestation, spiritual practices which you attribute your success to?
I do. I definitely do. So many years ago, I discovered the law of attraction when I was going through a painful breakup, and I was kind of just like Googling everything. And
Help
I
me.
help me. And I found the law of attraction and the secret, which I think is how a lot of people start in this world, and started learning about the benefits of gratitude and all these different things that you can do to kind of, help to manifest the life that you want. And I was really inspired by that. Something that I do still practice really regularly is scripting and journaling. So writing about your life as though um, things have already happened. So, I'm so happy that I just landed this amazing client. This is their budget. Even if that client hasn't come into my universe yet. And
Yeah.
I'm always amazed. I try to look back at old journals every, 6 months. And I'm always amazed to say, wow, I don't even remember writing this. And look, I have this now and this has come true. And it really serves two purposes. I think it helps to really keep you inspired to say I'm on the right track. And I think it also helps you really realize how much you wanted this thing. Because I think sometimes in the present moment, you can forget that this was something you wanted so much. You're just kind of already thinking about the next thing. But when you can look back and say, wow, 6 months ago, I wrote about this and it was something that was on my top thing to manifest, and now I've manifested it. And just living in that for a minute can really help to ground you and keep you really inspired with what you're doing now and not just thinking always about the next thing.
Yes, yes, to all of those things for sure. I follow similar practices myself, and it is quite amazing to look back and be like, 5 years ago, I wanted, these five things, and like four of them are here. I'm sitting in them, I'm enjoying them, I'm driving it, I ride horses, so like I'm riding it. Like
Ah,
it's like these things exist, and you're absolutely correct. Like it does kind of, because things don't happen, like you're not getting the house, getting the car, getting the things like the next day where you're like, whoa, crazy. It's like 5 years later, if you kind of look at it logically, you're like, okay, well, like this is how it happened. But just to see that like you planned for that, and then the actionable steps you took have brought you to the place where you've achieved it. It's just such a lovely thing to look at. And then it's very exciting to then be like, okay, so what are the next 5 years going to bring?
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I absolutely love that. And it is exciting. It's like what I'm really passionate about, like outside of all like real life stuff.
Yeah.
All the goods, all the goods. Where do you look for inspiration when you're in a rut, and what keeps you going when you hit project fatigue and you feel like up is down? Like if you've been looking for hardware for like 17 hours, like do you ever just go like is it nature? Is it like the spa? Like what are you doing to like recenter and kind of come back to earth?
Yeah, I think taking a break is really important. I think not trying to force like that 17-hour hardware hunt is really important. One thing I do also to take a break is I step off of Instagram and Pinterest when I'm feeling in a creative rut because, we've touched on this, but you start to see a lot of repetition on those platforms. And then I think it can be hard to think about something that isn't that, and
Mhm.
to say, I'm going to push this new idea. You get kind of maybe afraid because it's not what everyone else is doing. So sometimes Instagram is a really inspiring place and sometimes I think it's an inspiration killer. So you just have to find that balance. And then, yeah, I live on the lake. So spending time out on the dock, just relaxing, taking in nature is really, really important for my mental health and for my creative process. And I find I actually get the most inspiration from older design books. So we have quite an extensive library here at the office, and I'm always looking at like the older books. Right now, I'm reading Mark Hampton's on decorating, which is from the 80s, and finding a lot of inspiration there. I just finished Bunny Williams' book, An Affair with a House, which was written in 2005. And so I like looking at these older references to get inspired, and kind of what's old is new again, and
Mhm.
saying, oh, look at the way they did this window treatment, I haven't seen that before, let's like how can we incorporate that? So yeah, the archives, I find archival research really, really inspiring.
I love that. And I think that so authentically ties to what you said before. Like you're like going back to old school, and it's like you're really living that truth in the sense of like, okay, well, I'm not looking at the internet or Pinterest or Instagram or TikTok or whatever. I don't even know how to use TikTok.
Me
It's
neither.
you're like you're actually turning pages, you're actually visiting historical places. I see like that you're going to antique markets with friends. Like I feel like you are authentically living like your style and your truth, which again, like authenticity is kind of like my number one preach on the podcast is
Yeah, it's
like
huge.
I said to you before we started, like feel free to swear. Like when I'm with clients, like we had a consultation a few months ago, and like I have worked in construction my whole life. Like I was in roofing. I was, like it's like
Yeah.
this mouth, she says things I don't even know. And so
Yeah.
I very much like it's just part of who I am. And like if
Embrace it.
people, yeah, like I'm not going to try to like button it up. And like we were at a house and the customer said, like, we don't subscribe to swearing culture. And like I looked at my designer and she goes, like she's like, you're fucked.
She's like,
Yeah, it's
this
just like
isn't
not
good.
gonna happen. And that's kind of where you're like, Kate, like on a like base level, we're not aligning with this client. Like they're never going to love working with us because when I start talking to them and I get excited, I'm gonna say a word they don't like, and then it's just gonna be like a yucky feeling. So
Right.
yeah, so the authenticity there, going back to your much lovelier, like touching books and hand drafting. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. And I think, authenticity is so important today when there is so much choice for people. I think there are more designers in the world than ever before, and there's more accessibility to those designers than ever before. And to be honest, most of us are talented and create beautiful spaces. And so I think showing people who you truly are online and what your personality is can help people say, I like to work with her as opposed to somebody else, her or him, I guess, other than somebody else, right? So, when I go to meet clients, they ask about Luke, they ask about Kenobi, like they know me, they know my life, and they already feel that level of trust with me. Whereas, somebody might look at you and see you online and see you ride horses and do all this and really connect with that. So I think being your authentic self and showing up that way in every avenue of your life, but also your business is really important to connecting with the right clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with that. Like I know that, and I very much subscribe to like it's not a competition. It's like there's so many designers, but there's also so many clients, and there's clients that are going to vibe with you. There's clients that are going to vibe with me. There's clients that are going to vibe with them, and there's enough for everybody. It's like there's an abundance of availability that out there, and it's like you have to make sure that who you're connecting with is going to be a good fit for you, just for like everybody's peace of mind.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
you mentioned Kenobi. So my next question, what's your greatest joy in life? Because obviously like we've chatted on Instagram, but like I have two little ones and they are mine. So I'm assuming Kenobi's yours, but feel free to say something
Yeah.
else.
I have written Kenobi. My family, my partner Luke, my dog Kenobi, and I think the life we've built at the lake house is just my greatest joy. Sure, there are things I look around the house and I'm like, oh, I need to renovate this, I need to do that. But every day I come home, I'm happy to see them. I'm happy to look at our lake view, go for a swim, go for a walk with Kenobi. So for me, yeah, the family aspect is huge, and it's my why. And that's it.
Is Kenobi a rescue?
He is a rescue from Texas. And we almost have twin dogs. They look
We
very
do.
similar.
Yeah. Artie's a rescue from North Carolina. So
Oh
they're both
yeah.
like Southern boys
Southern boys. Yeah.
in their little tuxedos. They're so cute.
That's right.
Okay, last question. What do the next 5 years hold? What are you writing down in that future letter to yourself?
Yeah. So it's funny because I feel like my goals for the business have changed so much since I started the business. I think in the beginning, I just wanted it all. I wanted the shop. I wanted a show. I wanted 100 employees. I wanted all these things. And my vision for my life or my business was a lot um, of a bigger scale. And what I want to focus on for the next 5 years is really doing better over doing more. So fewer things, but doing them in a way that really feeds my soul honoring where my heart is, which is running like a small boutique firm that caters to excellence for client service and also caters to really pushing the boundaries of design. So I want to really hone into the artistry of design and focusing more on natural materials, sustainable materials, bespoke pieces, supporting local artisans, all of this. So my business mind has really shifted. It's more focused. I think it's just as ambitious, but just ambitious in a new way. In the next 5 years, I would love a book. A book deal is something I would be really, really interested in. And yeah, just really staying true to my heart and not getting distracted by what I think I should be doing because other people are doing it. I think that's one of my really big goals for myself.
I think that's really respectable because as designers, it's like those are kind of your top five. Like, you know, I want a show, I want 100 employees, I want like multi-million-dollar projects all year round, all over the world. And it's just like, I think to identify and to be like emotionally intelligent enough to identify like what actually makes you happy versus like what checks in the box society or, you know, the whole industry, says that you should need. I just think that's a very respectable quality to be like, no, actually, like I've done a lot of reflection and like these are the things that bring me joy and are going to create actual better results for clients, for my employees, for my partner, to kind of be just like in it. So I love that. Any last words of advice for our lovely listeners today?
I think just, stick with it. Business ownership is really, really tough. I think it's especially tough for women. And I think we have what it takes. So just keep at it. You're going to have hard days. You're going to have really amazing days. But just let your passion drive you. Don't lose focus. Don't lose heart. And, I'm always here to chat. I do business mentorship on The Expert. So if you need any advice, feel free to reach out.
I had no idea The Expert did business mentorship. That's cool. I thought it was just consults. So that is very interesting.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? What's your website, Instagram?
Yep. So my website is tiffanyleighdesign.com. Leigh is spelled Leigh. My Instagram handle is the same. So you can find me there.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much for your time today. It's been so insightful and just absolutely lovely chatting with you. Appreciate it very much.
This is wonderful. Thank you. And we'll have to get together in person soon and have a dog play date.
Definitely.